Welcome to the Carnivore Cast, a podcast focused on the carnivore diet and lifestyle, with practical advice from successful carnivores, citizen scientists, and top researchers. I'm your host, Scott Meslinski, and I'm here to speak with experts and experienced carnivores to get answers to your biggest and meatiest questions while helping you live your best life as a carnivore. If you enjoy the show, please consider supporting the Carnivore Cast on Patreon. By becoming a patron, you'll help us reach more people and continue to create content on carnivore. There are also exclusive perks available, such as private Q&As, consultations with me, and more. Become a supporter at patreon.com/carnivorecast. Check the episode description for the link. Thank you, and I'll see you there. Kelly Hogan is a 10-plus year carnivore, founder of the popular My Zero Carb Life site, moderator of the original Zeroing In on Health Facebook group, mother and teacher. Kelly has helped thousands of people over several years in the ZIOH Facebook group and personally used a carnivore diet to overcome her excess weight struggles, fix her fertility problems, and free herself from chronic dieting. She's producing fantastic content every day on her YouTube and her Instagram via stories and Q&As at Kelly Hogan 91 on Instagram. That's Kelly_Hogan91. And on her YouTube, My Zero Carb Life. Welcome back to the show, Kelly.
Hey, Scott. Thank you for having me back.
Of course. So I'd love to start with just, how have you been? What have you been up to? How is life for Kelly Hogan?
It's good. So, like a lot of folks, I was more in the house for a while, starting around March, but I'm a teacher and the school where I teach, we're back 100%. So I'm a music teacher. I have 6 classes per day and they are full these days. We did for a while do like half-size classes. So I'm around a lot of people. I know that's not the case for some. I hear a lot of people say, they're lonely or, suffering through we just have very different situations right now, but I am definitely not lonely, Scott.
That's great.
I'm around a lot of kids all day and then I have 3 at home and their schooling is going well. Everything's pretty good for us right now.
That's awesome. And, how's carnivore been for you? By the way, I should have mentioned at the start, but if folks haven't listened to it yet, you should go definitely check out part 1 with Kelly Hogan. We talked all about her story and her diet and her kind of evolution. But how has it been for you lately? And I know recently you were tinkering with organ meats a little bit. So why did you do that? How did it go? And what did you learn?
Yeah, so I have not, I've done the same thing basically for 11 years, really, just mostly beef since October of 2009. The only things that have changed during that 11 years is I have gone some years without any coffee and I've done some years with coffee. And then the amount of fat I've used has tended to change more on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis. I haven't done like high-fat years and low-fat years. Same for salt. I go through periods where I really love salt and then long periods, sometimes months where I won't touch any salt. So those things fluctuate, but haven't been purposeful changes. This organ meat thing was one of the very first that I've changes that I've very purposefully done. And it kind of goes against what I normally preach, which is listen to your body. I've always said, if your body is craving more water, drink water. If you're not thirsty, you probably don't need it. That's really just always been, unless there's addiction involved. Obviously, if your body is screaming for cigarettes, it's probably not because you really need them. You're just addicted. Same for sugar or a donut. Yeah. So any addictive substance is going to get in the way of listening to your body. But when you've freed yourself from those things, then you can really just tune in and listen. Well, for a month, I did not listen. I just decided I'm going to see what all the hype is about organs. I've never really been drawn to organ meats. It's not that I was ever opposed to them. It's part of an animal. Of course, they're carnivore. And for people who enjoy eating them, I think it's great because then part of the critter is not being wasted that maybe I'm not eating. And I'm all for that. But I just have not gone out of my way to eat them for those 11 years. So when my 11-year anniversary with Carniversary, if you would, was coming up, I thought, let's give it a shot. So I went out to my local grocery store and I said, all right, what kind of organ meats do you have? And they had beef liver, chicken liver, beef heart. And that's where I started. And I mostly kept it at that. I also just added more variety in general. I started eating salmon roe and just more fish in general, some sardines. But for as far as every single day, I tried to make sure to eat at least one organ. Well, as Ambro Hearn pointed out to me, there's not like there's 27 different organs at the grocery store that I had to choose from. It's mostly liver. So that is mostly what I ate, and some heart. So it was pretty much 30 days of liver. And for the first couple of days, the taste was a little off-putting to me, and I started to get used to it. But then I found myself really not wanting it after a while. But no, this is the month of organ meat. So we're going to keep powering through. And I kept eating it every day. And I thought I was catching a cold, which, back to school full time was around that same time when the kids were all coming back. And of course, I slightly worried, like, is this more than a cold? But I didn't have a fever. I just didn't feel well. I was very stuffed up. My throat was scratchy. My eyes started to get itchy. And I felt very much like how my husband describes seasonal allergies, but I don't have allergies. So for him, he said, well, yeah, I feel the same way. It's just allergies. Everybody's are bad right now. I said, I never have allergies. And, he kind of jokes because you're getting older, maybe. So I just kept on with the liver and heart and fish. And by the end of the month, I felt like I was even starting to look like a person that's allergic to cats had just curled up with a cat. I just looked puffy and felt all kinds of scratchy. And then I decided, okay, a month was enough. Originally, I thought I might keep it up for longer. But at the 1 month mark, I called it off for then. It took, for real, I'm going to say maybe 2 days before I could feel a very significant difference, going back to just how I always feel, which was good. I felt great before. I felt good afterwards. So I am not opposed to eating organs. And I really think that if I went now to eating organ meats 1 or 2 times a week, or just as much as, I found them enjoyable, but I do think my body was trying to tell me at some point, even with just the taste and looking at them, they became less appealing. Whatever is in this meat, you've got enough of it, babe. And I wasn't listening and just kept pushing it. So I still say, listen to your body. And I don't know, Ambro Hearn, I just talked to her about this, and she says that if you already have plenty of vitamin A in your system, it is, in her opinion, very possible to get more than you need from especially liver. And if you're eating large amounts of fat, which I have been craving lately, that can even release the vitamin A further into your system. And that there is such a thing as vitamin A toxicity. She said one of the primary places that she has seen people experience it was with polar bear liver, which is much higher in vitamin A than chicken or beef. But she said that if it's possible with polar bear liver, and she said legitimately people have died from polar bear liver. It is so high in vitamin A. Wow. But she feels like it's possible that someone could have, mild reactions to just pushing yourself to daily eat a part of an animal that you would not normally eat. And obviously, if we were all out in the wild, every one of us would not daily be eating the liver, most likely. We would be sharing a kill. And so I think I was just pushing myself past what I really needed in regards to organs. But, I hear that exact, maybe not same, but very similar things from other people regarding organs. But I also hear from people who say, oh, are you kidding? I love them. I feel my best when I eat them. And I don't question that. I think we probably do have different needs. I know we have different backgrounds, so that does not surprise me at all. As far as everything else, especially since that month and before that month, has been mostly the same. I do still mostly eat beef, but I have no issues for myself when I partake in chicken and pork, which is normally every Sunday night. My father-in-law cooks for us, and he has a wide variety of meats. And he does not sauce them, and he knows not to use sugar or sweeteners, but, it's seasoned. He'll use garlic, powders and, just different seasonings. That doesn't bother me. Some people are very sensitive, but I've always done that and I still do. Energy is good. Sleeping is good. I've only done one other change here recently. I've experienced, well, I shouldn't say one. I've tweaked maybe several things this year just based on guests that have come on the show. I don't know about you, Scott, but you have somebody on and you just pick up some things.
Yeah, you learn a lot.
Yeah, Dr. Fit and Fabulous, Dr. Jamie Seaman, she really preached to me about plastics and how I was, I'll pick up fast food patties and I was just letting them sit in those plastic containers, which now seems ridiculous, but I didn't know. So earlier this year, she said, girl, you've got to stop that. So I did. And now I'm using either silicone or glass. Just take the dish with me. Little things like that I've picked up from people. But one of them here recently that has made a big difference is nighttime mouth taping, which I was not familiar with until about maybe 3 weeks ago. Just thinking about how much I mouth breathed at night. And James was telling me that I was actually becoming a louder and louder sleeper. And just with my snoring and tossing and turning. And he said I would stop breathing at night and sort of like have apnea episodes. I was not realizing it. If you had asked me, I would have said I was sleeping fine. But he said it was actually not very peaceful looking sleep. And I don't wear an Aura ring or anything. So I couldn't really validate how I was feeling, but I thought I was doing okay. So I began forcing myself to breathe through my nose, both during the day and during the night. I used to be a daytime nose breather, but I do wear a mask. I'm required to wear a mask now as I teach. So that's 8 hours a day. And I had noticed that I'd become a mouth breather, which is not attractive, but thankfully no one else could see it. I just was holding my jaw a certain way in order to breathe better at school, I suppose. And that had carried over into my nighttime. So now I'm forcing myself to breathe through my nose via just a little tiny piece of tape. And that has made a huge difference. I do feel more rested, but diet-wise, wow, very little has changed for 11 years. Very little.
Yeah. Well, that's super interesting, Kelly. And thank you for sharing. I definitely applaud you for experimenting, especially since what you've been doing has been working so well for you for so long and for so many others. It's awesome that you're having an open mind about some of these things. I think your takeaways are excellent. Like if you feel like you're craving something and you need it, you want liver and you try it and it makes you feel better, then go for it. But if it's repulsive to you or you have it a few times and you just don't feel as great, then maybe it's not for you. And I think that's a great approach.
Yeah, thanks.
And speaking of one thing you've talked about on your channel and interviewed a lot of veteran carnivores about, which I think is so awesome. Some of these folks like Charles Washington and Dana and others just hold so much wisdom, is fat and protein ratios. Yeah. So I'm curious, what have you found works best for you, the people you've helped and worked with? And when is the right time to even start thinking about this in your carnivore journey? Like when should you start potentially tinkering?
Yeah. So when I very first started carnivore, I was almost carnivore and I feel like that's not even a thing. I feel like it's like being almost pregnant, but almost carnivore for a few years before I officially made that switch. And I was not eating nearly enough fat. I didn't know what I was doing really during those few years before officially finding this community. And I was still of the mindset that lean meats were better. So I was forcing myself. Honestly, I was probably in quite a calorie deficit. I was quite hungry and had symptoms at times of rabbit starvation, like fogginess mentally and just not much energy, dry skin. So then I found the carnivore community and they said, oh, you're doing such a great job. Your pictures are amazing. You've lost so much weight, but why are you not eating fat? And I thought, well, I didn't know I was allowed. Again, that conversation was 2009. So if it seems sort of funny now, there wasn't Carnivore Cast back then. I couldn't listen to things like that. I was just learning. If the information was there, I had not heard it. So I thought I was doing the right thing by watching my fat intake. And they just kept encouraging me that if I was hungry and lacked energy, that I should really try eating more fat. But they did not at that point believe in adding fats to meat. They truly felt like the animal has enough fat. Just find some fatty cuts, because I was eating a lot of chicken breast. They said, you don't need to add fat. Just get a steak. That's going to give you fat. Well, I craved steak. I mean, as soon as I started eating a regular, like just a ribeye, that amount of fat was almost euphoric to me. Like, I needed that so badly at that point. Yeah. So I lived off of fatty steaks, and I did add some like fat trimmings every once in a while from the butcher. He would just give me some free fat, and I would add that to the skillet. So for about 6 months, it was the very first 6 months back in 2009, I did eat a pretty fatty, probably 3 to 4 pounds of meat per day, because I think my body was just craving it so much. But after that 6 months, I feel like I settled into what has just become my normal fat to protein kind of ratio, which is that some meals I do eat a lot of burger patties, which are not big, fatty, juicy burger patties. They're pretty thin. And I don't know what people have asked, what are the fat to protein ratio on them? I have no idea. They're just not dripping with fat and grease. They're just kind of dry-ish burger patties. I call them meat cookies because I can pick them up with my hands and they're not like running down my wrists or anything. And I eat that a lot without any added fat. But then there are times where I sit down with those and it's like, I just know I need something. I need something else on this. So if I don't have a ribeye on me, then I'll just add either bacon fat. I keep a bowl of bacon fat in my fridge, and that's just where I've cooked bacon, and the grease that's left over, I put it in my fridge. So I'll smear a little bit of that on a burger patty if I'm wanting it, or here lately, butter. And for a decade, it's just been meal to meal. I don't know. There are people who really set out to try to meet a ratio every day or weekly, or they'll have a month of high fat. And that's just never, not since that first 6 months has that felt right for me. It's just very fluid. Every single meal feels different. And like this morning, I did feel like I wanted some scrambled eggs, and it felt great to put 3 big hunks of butter in it. But tomorrow I'll look at the butter maybe, and it just won't look appealing. And I think new carnivores are kind of baffled by that. And I'm sure I would have been too, because I couldn't read my body at all when I first started this diet. I didn't know what I needed. I think I was honestly just stuck on you need fatty meat. And that was probably accurate. But now my eyes are a pretty good guide to what I want. There are times when I look at my kids' chicken and it looks delicious. They eat a lot of chicken, not skinless, boneless chicken breast, but chicken thighs. And it looks fantastic. And I'm dying to get my hands on it. And then other days it just doesn't look great. So if people are starting this diet and they're struggling with how much fat or how much protein to eat, I would say not to stress for the first several months. Whatever you are craving that's not sugar, whatever animal product you're craving is probably just go for it. If it's keeping you away from the other junk around you, just enjoy, eat, party it up. But at some point, you might want to just start reflecting on especially if you're not seeing the results that you want. There are people where they can stay in that mode always. There are carnivores who have been carnivore for 5 years. They feel great. They no longer give it much thought. If they want pork rinds, they eat them. If they want sour cream or scrambled eggs, all animal products, wide variety, and they're happy. And that's great. Wonderful. If somebody is not meeting the goals or expectations or the results they want, then I would say after several months, if you've kind of gotten into just the habit, you've broken addiction. I think that's the main thing at first. You've broken those addictions. You're free from constant carb cravings. Then, yeah, you might want to see, okay, well, how would I feel if I tried to eat a little bit leaner if you've been adding a lot of fat? Especially, my first question, actually, I think I would ask somebody is, what are you forcing right now? What are you doing because you think you're supposed to? Sometimes people think they're supposed to add fat, so they're just piling it on, regardless of how their appetite. They just think they're supposed to. Same for salt. There are people who don't think it, they're not doing it because they want it. They've just heard that they're supposed to. So I would tell someone to reflect on, what are you forcing right now? What advice are you just blindly following? And then to really try to examine, well, why not try to back off of that and see how it goes? Give it a few weeks of less salt, or lay off the electrolytes for a little bit. If you're not getting what you want and you're only doing it because you read it somewhere, then just try listening to your body for a little bit. Mix it up. I think sometimes we can learn a lot by just changing what we're doing, and especially if we're doing it for external reasons.
Yeah, that's fantastic practical advice for people. And I love you talking about how you've gotten to this place of listening to your body and being in really close touch with your craving. I almost feel like cravings is the wrong word, but like your hunger signals for fat and protein, and knowing what your body needs at a given time. I think that's a really great place that a lot of people should strive to get to. And with, fitness apps and MyFitnessPal and constant snacking and eating out of boredom, I feel like so many of us have gotten so far away from that. And so that's a really great place to be. And while we're on the topic, you've given a lot of awesome tips for starting carnivores here, Kelly. What else would you have for people? I just want to make sure we cover it. You cover it in a lot of your content, which I think is fantastic, but tips for new people starting carnivore in 2021, what should they be paying attention to? What are some simple ways to get started? Do they need to be eating grass-finished meat and supplementing with organs all the time?
Right. Especially if someone has been coming from a standard American diet. Okay, so my husband eats a pretty standard American diet still. He knows a lot about the carnivore diet. He has certainly heard about it, but he has not had the motivation, health-wise, weight-wise, to actually do it. So I'm going to pretend if he were to suddenly, January 1, say, that's it, I'm going to give this a shot. Oh my gosh.
Maybe 2021's the year.
Oh, I'd be so happy. I mean, I've definitely tried to convince my fantastic husband to try this, but he has not yet. But if he were, then, I would suggest that he get rid of the triggers that are around him. He definitely keeps carbs in this house, and it is not a trigger for me anymore. It used to be very difficult, but as it's become less of an issue for me to see those things, he has brought in more and more into the house. Right now, his boss gives him Christmas cookies and they sit on the counter. So I think when someone's first starting, make it as easy on yourself as you can. I hate to waste food, but if it's not truly food for you anymore, then find a way to get rid of it. If it makes you feel better to give it to someone, I hate it for that person though, but just make it easier and get the stuff out of your house. Then go shopping, go find some meat that looks good to you. If you love eggs, get a ton of them. Heavy cream, cheese. It's possible that you will eventually feel better without dairy, but dairy can be such a huge help to people when they are first giving up carbs. It can really help them, I think, feel less restricted, because, man, make a big old omelet with eggs and cheeses and meats. Just stay full of animal products that you love. And I would not stress for a minute, unless you just mentally feel better about where your cow came from. I really would not, in the beginning, worry about forcing down any liver or forcing down, making sure that you buy the most expensive meats or only grass finished. Just whatever you like. If you like the taste of grass finished meat, buy it. I personally still love the taste of a cow that had some greens before it was slaughtered. I just do. I think it's delicious. So whatever meat you like, stock up. When you are going to a party, if it's a potluck kind of thing, take something that you love. Here recently, I've been sharing with people that bacon cooked not super crispy so that you can roll it up with cream cheese spread on it. Make it into little bacon cream cheese pinwheels. Man, that's a party, right? Take that. You are going to feel happy to eat. If you love seltzer water, stock up with all of that. Get all the diet sodas and regular sodas out of the house. Anything sweet tasting is just going to make you crave more sweets. So it does not matter if it says carbs 0 on a box of sugar-free Jell-O. That is not considered a carnivore, 0 carb friendly food, because it will cause you to crave sweet just as much as a donut would. That's one thing that I think people misunderstand a lot. They'll send me pictures of ingredients and nutritional facts and say, is this okay? And it will say carb 0, but then it'll have, stevia and xylitol and all of the sweeteners, which I'm not going to tell people I'm not their mother, but my kids don't have those things because I am their mother. But unless you came from my uterus, I'm not going to tell you you cannot have artificial sweeteners. But I will tell you that for most people, that is the trick to getting rid of carb cravings and truly finding freedom to just eat what Dr. Berry calls proper human diet, to eat animal foods and to not miss junk. Is you've got to really get it out of your system. And I think a misconception is that by dragging it out, you're making it easier on yourself. But it's like, somebody who wants to be free from cigarettes, still having one per day, thinking it's making it easier to quit. It may be easier to wean down for some people, but at some point you'll never be free from the cigarettes until you stop smoking the cigarettes. I've never been a smoker, so it doesn't even cross my mind ever to buy a pack of cigarettes. And the same thing now goes for donuts. Once you're free from it, it doesn't cross your mind to have it anymore. And even if it's a mental, some people still continue to have those mental kind of cravings. You can fight that. People can learn to deal with the mental. Like, I remember what ice cream tasted like, so I may sometimes have a mental longing for it, but without the physical attachment to it anymore. You can do it. Sometimes once you get past the actual physical craving, addiction, attachment, withdrawal, all of that, you've got a fighting chance at this. But that's hard. Prepare yourself for a really hard first couple to few weeks. And the more strict you are, the quicker that'll pass. The more you give in, it's like a toddler. You keep giving in to them, they'll only tantrum harder. You're dragging it out. So at some point, you just gotta, power through that. Stay full of things that you love. And then if you've done that for 6 months, most people already feel so much better that they know they're doing the right thing. And then if they want to start tweaking around and deciding what exact kinds of meats, is dairy good for me? Are the pork rinds causing me to retain water? Then you can ask these questions. But, I think you should make life as easy as possible when you are breaking a very difficult habit and addiction. Just go easy on yourself.
Yeah. Excellent advice. Very wise. And I think adherence is so key. And it really comes through in what you've just said, Kelly, and all of your content is just try to make yourself adherent, especially when you start,
just do it.
It doesn't matter how small of steps you're taking forward.
Yes.
Take those steps and don't try to run. Don't try to leap. This is a lifestyle change, and set yourself up for success.
Yes.
And one thing I wanted to ask you about, Kelly, is recipes. So where do you draw the line between, let's make some recipes, let's mix it up, let's make this food tasty and enjoyable versus quote unquote, just eat meat? And maybe what are some of your favorite recipes?
Okay. Yeah, Scott. So I see a ton of carnivore recipes that look amazing. And I especially am grateful for all of those sites and channels and content for people who think carnivore, it sounds so boring, right? And I want to say, there's tons of amazing recipes that involve only animal foods that you could choose from. Lots of variety. That is perfect. And I'm thrilled that people make that content. For someone like myself, I do not need anything to encourage me to eat more. So you kind of have to know yourself. If you're breaking addiction, you probably should go on all of the recipe sites, make it as tasty, satiating, palatable. Yes. For someone like myself, I have a huge appetite. I always have. There is a reason that I weighed over 260 pounds. I have a very hard time feeling full. The phrase bottomless pit, my family used that a lot, talking about me as a child and teenager. And it was a sort of a joke as a kid. My grandpa was also known as the bottomless pit. We just don't read our own hunger signals well. The idea of being satiated, something, I don't know if something is broken. I'm not sure, but it's very hard for me to read hunger signals. That has dramatically improved with eating meat. But I'll tell you, there are some foods, even from the animal kingdom, that make that a challenge. Cheese for me is one of them. You could take a fatty, crispy on the outside ribeye, and if it's cooked just right, you throw some blue cheese crumbles on it. Give me some seltzer water on the side. It could be a 3-pound ribeye. And if it is really tasty to me, and it would be, I could easily eat it all, whether I'm truly very hungry or not. So for someone, and here's the other thing, I don't know if that's really a problem. That I don't know. People say, was that bad? I don't know. I just know that I wasn't really that hungry. But then I could put away something that tastes really great. Or if it's smothered in cheese, I can eat more than I would have needed. Bacon is another one. Those bacon pinwheels, hungry or not, you put a plate of those in front of me, I can eat a lot of them. Now, for myself, I have decided I don't think I want to do that. First of all, it's very expensive. And I don't know that it really bothers me weight-wise, but I do end up feeling eventually overly stuffed, and I don't love that feeling. I feel kind of sluggish when I do that. My energy isn't quite as good because I think I have overeaten what I needed. So for a person like myself, and that is not everyone, a person like myself, I do think that less exciting meats are okay. I purposefully choose to mostly eat burger patties because, one, it's easy and I'm lazy. And secondly, they aren't exciting. They only taste great to me when I'm actually hungry. And when I am actually hungry, I love them. A pile of burger patties, excellent, delicious. A little butter on top, and what a treat. When I am not actually hungry, there is no way I could eat a pile of burger patties. It's just not good to me. And that was not my tactic for my first several months at all. This has just become something I've learned about myself, that I can regulate my own hunger better if it is not a super exciting meat cast. Yeah, so I think it really does come down to just knowing your own self. If you're struggling to make yourself be carnivore and eat animal foods, then yeah, look up all of the recipes, make it as delicious and exciting as you want to. That's wonderful. And then also know yourself. And if you're like me and you know that you could overeat on, I feel like I could overeat tree bark almost. Like if you know that it's very hard for you to feel full and to judge your own hunger, then it may benefit someone to try eating something that is not quite as exciting. That's sort of just something that I have fallen into with time, but it's really been several years now. And it's almost comforting to me to know that if I look in the fridge and I see that plate of burger patties, I know for sure right away if I'm hungry or not. I make a lot of casseroles for my kids, and I have no idea if I'm hungry when those are involved. I mean, if it is a crustless quiche with sausage and cheese, I'm going to eat it. It does not matter if I'm hungry. I will eat it. And then I will eat so much that sometimes I will give myself a bellyache because I just don't know when to stop. And I think that's why some people end up setting up I guess a workaround from this is sometimes eating windows or fasting is a way that people will set up those restrictions. I don't like that for myself. I find myself obsessing over the time, and it almost creates like just an anxiety for me. And this is sort of my way around that. If I'm truly hungry for plain old burger patties or even just a not fabulous steak, then I know I'm hungry. I should eat something. That's not me being crazy and giving into a craving. That's just some plain old meat. And if my body is screaming for plain old meat, I'll do it. I'll do it every time. My body will sometimes scream for a beef stick or sausage or even a wedge of cheese. But I cannot personally trust myself with that because I just really like those foods. And I can just always give in. But again, I'm not sure how big of a problem that is. But if someone is wanting to truly eat when they are hungry, that's one way that I have found that I can do that.
Yeah, it's all about knowing yourself, as you say. And I find the exact same thing for me. Like if I know after, I've eaten a pound of beef or a meal, I still could really go back and have more of it. It's my body telling me I need more versus, I open the cabinet and there's some carnivore snacks in there, or a bit of cheese. And I'm like, yeah, am I really just nibbling? Do I really need food? Probably not. It's a great litmus test. And you mentioned fasting and meal timing. So I'd love to talk to you a little bit about that. Have you played with different meal timing yourself? I know you generally prefer a midday largest meal than a slightly smaller dinner, but have you ever tried like breakfast and lunch instead, or just one meal a day? And then how often do you switch up your meal timing? Like how often do you eat breakfast?
Yeah, so on weekends, this morning, James, he was here, he was at a skillet and he had a carton of eggs and he said, "Hey, I'm scrambling eggs for the kids. Do you want some?" Well, sure I do.
Yeah.
Yes. I am not strict about this it's not a rule for me that I don't eat breakfast. I have to be clocked in at work and working by 6:55. So it's just an early morning. I'm not standing around my kitchen with a lot of time on my hands to think about food. And it is go, go, go once I get to work until lunchtime. So for my life, it just works better. I think I've just fallen into the pattern on school days of I don't eat until lunch. And then my kids are eating dinner. And a lot of times when they're eating, I could eat something. I like to share a meal with them. So I'll eat a smaller meal for dinner. But this is just based on my life. A lot of people will ask me, why do I do that? Is it because of, they think there's like a scientific reason. Nope. I just have to be at work early. That's about it. But on a day like today, I definitely had some eggs. And then what happens is I'm hungry for lunch later than usual. Or, maybe if it was a big breakfast, then maybe I'm not hungry again till dinner. I think whenever we do choose to eat, if it's a large amount, what happens for most of us is just a longer amount of time until the next meal. What you said about grazing, though, is true. I don't find many thriving, successful carnivores who just go around all day snacking all the time. I think most of us do eat a large meal at whatever time we choose to eat it. And then at whatever time you're truly hungry for another large meal of meat, then that's when you should eat it. For most of us, that's not going to be a couple hours. If you really get full, it's probably going to be several hours. But I think if people just figure out with their own life, their own schedule, I have not found that there's any great pattern amongst the long-time carnivores of when they eat. Charles Washington, he ends up eating 4 smaller times per day. A lot of times he is working almost nonstop. That is a busy guy. So he'll grab a smaller meal and then he will typically do that 3 to 4 times a day. He just doesn't have time to sit down and eat a big meal. And he is absolutely thriving and fine. So no, I guess I have not done a lot of experimenting with how I would feel if I ate a huge meal at breakfast and then another one at dinner. And honestly have not seen any compelling reason to experiment with that much. I just think if it's working for your schedule and your life and you have the energy that you need, if I found that I was like slumping mid-morning and struggling to make it to lunch, I would definitely adjust that. But I'm so busy all morning that I have no problem making it until lunchtime before I eat.
Yeah, I think there's no perfect answer there.
No.
Like you said, it's different for different people. It's what works for your schedule, when you're hungry, and and how you feel. A lot of people feel awesome having one meal a day. I personally feel sick, and it doesn't appeal to me to do that. But everyone's a little bit different, so it's something worth finding what works well for you.
Yeah. Oh, recently, I'm sorry to jump back in, but for the OMAD thing, every once in a while, I will kind of accidentally OMAD, as in if it's like back when I have not been to a Golden Corral in a while, but it's all you can eat steak. If people know what that is, you can get literally as much steak as you want, and it's just a buffet. And I haven't been in several months, but when I used to go there, I would sort of save myself up for that meal. So I wouldn't eat lunch so that I could go for dinner and just kill it. And oh my gosh, I would leave there so full that then I would typically not get hungry again for 24 hours. And so then I would be like, oh my gosh, the next day I would have dinner and, oh, this is OMAD for me. And it's almost a joke because I don't ever I try not to try for anything. Like I'm not trying to eat once a day or trying to eat twice a day. It's just when I'm hungry. But I would be like, hey, look, this is my OMAD. But what I personally tend to do then is eat so much that I get that feeling of discomfort. And I just don't like that. I don't know. Some people love it. They love to be Thanksgiving full. They like that feeling of doing that once per day, just getting stuffed and then not doing it again for 24 hours. But I just don't really enjoy that feeling. So for me, it just makes more sense to break it up into two. But you're right. If they're loving one meal a day, heavens, I know a lady that's doing pretty great every other day of eating. Wow. Alternate day fasting. I think if I woke up in the morning and thought to myself, oh, today is my day of not eating, that would trigger so much anxiety for me. But that's just me knowing myself. And I could probably work past that. I'm not saying I couldn't learn to eat every other day, but I really like to eat, actually. So yeah. I like waking up and knowing that I'm going to have my lunch that day. But for folks who they're not bothered by that, if they feel great and have the energy that they want to have every other day, I don't care. Enjoy.
Yeah. Good for them. Absolutely. And Kelly, overall, you have probably dozens of people messaging you a day. You're in all these carnivore groups. You're helping people. What problems and questions do you see with carnivores these days across all the people you interact with and get questions from? Like, what are some newer things that are popping up more that you wish you could just shout from the rooftops, either to do differently or not to worry about?
Oh, what a great question. So we go through phases. I'm newer to the everyday interactions on Instagram. I've been on Instagram for a while, but as far as really up in my Instagram, that's been 2020. And over there, I tend to get people, very beginners, a lot of messages from people who are just starting. And so it's mostly, how do I stop eating sugar? And, we talked about that quite a bit here already. On Facebook, in the carnivore groups, it gets far more specific and goes through phases. So we've had phases of the oxalates, where that's all we hear day after day is dealing with oxalates. And it's weird because it's almost like everyone gets a memo all of a sudden, and we won't always know where it comes from. Like, what started this? Or for a while, it was all about you must drink bone broth. It was bone broth day in and day out. Struggles with bone broth. How can I get in more bone broth? I must have bone broth. We're like, what? Okay. I mean, you don't have to drink bone broth. It's totally optional. If it's helping you, great. It comes from an animal, but it is not like required by carnivores, nothing like that. Salt is a big one here recently. You've got people who say, salt is absolutely 100% required in order to live. You will die without it. I mean, amazingly smart carnivores will say that. And then you've got carnivores who just flat out say, if I use any salt at all, I get leg cramps at night and I don't feel good. And you're like, well, wow, can both of these things really be true? And I guess we spend a lot of time trying to argue it out and figure it out one way or the other, but maybe both of these things can be true. I legitimately have very dear friends who have not used any salt for years. Meat already does have sodium in it. And they say that without carbs in their life, that is enough for them. And that when they have accidentally had salt, like at a restaurant or something, they feel worse for it. And I know these people, I know they're telling the truth, but I'm also, not going to claim that the people who say they feel awful without salt are lying either. And I think the salt debate is probably the most recent one now. And it's one of those where I just try to tell people, try it. If you're having problems, maybe try it the other way. Experiment with yourself, but nobody can tell you for sure what is going to work best for you. I certainly can't. Again, for me, it's a very daily thing. There are days when I want more, days when I want less. I just hate to hear any hard and fast rules that are supposed to apply to all of us when I know for sure that it doesn't apply to a pretty large number of people. I think that's probably the biggest one right now is the salt thing.
Yeah.
And, for a while it was all about everybody needed to be taking all of these certain supplements. And I feel like that's maybe toned down a little bit because we got reports of people saying, look, I started taking these supplements and it actually made things worse. And I think that makes sense because if you weren't having a problem, there's probably no reason to start. But if, somebody wants to try it and see how they feel, I don't think there's any one supplement that is required for all carnivores, but I definitely think there are some that could help some carnivores. I think a lot of times I sound like a broken record and I hate that, but I think it is just important for us to know that there are tiny nuances in each of our bodies.
Yeah.
From our history, I'm sure that my eating history and my weight in the past it's so different, probably even from yours, Scott, that you and I are going to have slightly different things that we need. The idea of fasting even is so exciting to some people, but to someone like myself who has gone through extreme periods of restriction where I felt like I was starving, it sounds miserable. So I don't think there is one size fits all for some of these nuances. Now, there are some things that I do think one size fits at least most, and that is that animal foods have a lot of great nutrition that humans need. And that eating more and more seed oils and vegetable oils and sugars and processed foods will not improve your human health. I think those broad kinds of statements can be applied to most/all humans. But when it gets down to little things like, do I need a packet of electrolytes? I just don't think that we can say a hard and fast yes or no for all of us.
Yeah, I think those are great points. And Kelly, one thing I've found really interesting is you're so giving with your time and your advice and helping people. And even when it's faced with animosity, like I see you in the comments of Sean Baker's Instagram posts, and people are always fighting you, asking for your blood work, doubting your calories.
Yeah.
Like, why? First of all, why do you think so many people are in such disbelief about the results you've had as a long-term carnivore? And then what motivates you to keep helping them and answering them?
Well, I mean, I don't know that many people in my real life who are like me. I work with one other full-blown carnivore who's probably been doing this about 4 years, and she has so lost about 100 pounds. But that's about it as far as people that I see day to day. So I completely understand why this seems either bizarre or unbelievable, because there's not, droves of us walking around. And where some people who are just now hearing about this, even carnivores who have only heard about this for the past couple of years, I absolutely understand that it seems unbelievable that there was a group of people doing it 11 years ago, because they never heard of it. And if we haven't personally heard of it, then it's hard to accept something. When I hear someone tell me, oh, yes, I've been doing this for 10 years, even I think, well, where have you been? I've never heard of you, right? There's a little element of doubt. I'm a nice person, so I don't say that, but I do kind of wonder, wow, where have you been? And so I think that's human nature for people to ask questions, and I don't mind. I think people could use a little more kindness and tact at times. But yeah, I like trying to answer questions, in part because I have children who are not total carnivores, but they're very meat-based, and they frequently say, oh, I think I'm going to be a carnivore when I grow up. And that's, partly just how kids are. They also want to be music teachers. So I think sometimes those things change, but it's part of being a kid is you admire your parents and you want to be like them. But I don't want them to have to explain themselves as much as I have for the past 11 years. I don't want to have to keep explaining myself. I want to expose people to the idea that, yeah, this is a thing. That's it. This is a thing. And it may not be for you. It may not be what you are going to have to do or need to do or want to do. But I just want to open people's minds to the idea that there are a lot of humans who actually feel better without plants, who love eating animal foods. And we're not freaks. We're not cannibals. We're really nice, normal people, some of us, who just happen to feel our best eating this way. And if that is the only thing I end up changing for people, is just exposing them to hopefully what they can see as a decent human being who happens to eat this way, then I'm going to chalk that up as a success, because I think that's worth something. I may not have all of the science. There are definitely doctors and scientists who can back up everything that I have claimed. And I think I used to feel bad for not being more well-studied and not having a bigger degree. And for the fact that I'm a music teacher, I felt almost apologetic for that. And you know what, Scott? I'm done with that.
Good for you.
I don't have to be sorry that I'm a normal person who thrives on meat. I think that's maybe exactly what some people need to see. And so I show up in the comments and just try to be as patient and level-headed as I can be, and hope that will at least plant a seed of, oh yeah, I've heard of that before. Oh, great. Now you've heard of it.
Yeah, that's so awesome, Kelly. And you shouldn't be apologetic at all. I mean, you have helped so many people, and you're so deeply empathetic and knowledgeable about how this diet works and how to help people and help them troubleshoot and help them get through challenges and barriers. I think, you are perfectly positioned to broadcast your message and help more people. So I think that's wonderful. And a last question I wanted to ask you, and it's been really great to hear you talk about this on your Instagram stories and in some of your mukbang style videos with your husband. Does everyone need to eat only meat forever? And how do you think about that personally and also for others?
As far as if I were to right now go and eat a pickle, it's not going to kill me, and I would probably be perfectly fine. If I were to eat a pickle every single day, I don't know that I would suffer any actual physical ailments because of it. I don't think it would hurt me. I think it is partly dependent on, for me at least, being I was very addicted to all things carbohydrate. And knowing how it took very little for me to start craving that stuff again. I personally enjoy the freedom more than I would enjoy the pickles. And maybe I could handle something like, I use pickle as an example, because over the 11 years, the 2 times I have ever quote cheated, and I hate that word for this, but I guess eaten any plant food at all was when I was pregnant with my daughter Julia. I did eat some pickles, and then I gave in and ate some peanuts when I was pregnant the 3rd time. And those definitely did cause an itchy, bad reaction in me. But I think that there are people who could probably eat a meat-based diet. Nisha Berry, for example, she feels great. Her lab work is great. I use her as an example just because I think she is a happy, beautiful, thriving human who is very open about what she eats. And she includes onions in her diet because she loves them. She likes the way it makes her meat taste. It does not seem to bother her. She says she isn't having anything she's trying to fix. She just feels great. I am the last person that is going to go and try to snatch onions off of Nisha Berry's plate. What more could I want for her than she already feels freedom from carb addiction? She already has the blood work she wants, the body she wants, the energy she wants. She is able to do that. And it's not like she is now feeling like she wants to eat platefuls of cookies. So that's working for her. I guess her gut is able to handle it more. Mentally, she can handle it. And I don't know how it would work for me. I've lost my desire to try. My mom through the years has said, why don't you just have a little coleslaw? It's not going to kill you. And I agree with her to a point. It wouldn't, but I also don't want it anymore. And I don't know that I could handle it. I don't know. Maybe it would be fine. Maybe I could eat it and then walk away and not worry about it and think 2 months down the road, oh, maybe I'll have a little more coleslaw. But I don't know that. And it's not worth it to me to find out. There certainly are thriving humans who eat plants. I cannot argue that. There are. But there are also a lot of not thriving humans, period, full stop. Just look around. There are a lot of people who are not thriving. And I think a lot of those people are trying hard to do what they've been told. I have family members who are trying so hard to eat a low-fat diet and to eat very little cholesterol and to avoid red meat. And they're doing it because they're being told to do that. So whether or not, they could thrive eating all meat with some asparagus, my gosh, I wish. Please do. Please try that. It is such a step in the right direction for them that I hold no hard feelings for someone that's ketovore versus carnivore, because they are so far ahead of the people that I see every single day. I can go to Walmart and I would say half of the people over age 60 are on those little scooters. And it looks fun, sure, but they shouldn't need a little rascal to get through a shopping trip. I think that there's such a disparity between where most people where I live at least are, and then even ketovore. Of course, I would love to see everyone be carnivore. I think that sounds awesome, but I don't know that everyone needs to be there in order to achieve amazing benefits. But I also know that's a big leap to even get that far. So I hear people say carnivores are so dogmatic, it has to be all meat. I know that for me, yes, I do feel best that way. But there's about 1 million steps between where most Americans are right now and how I eat. And I would be thrilled if they took any one of those, let alone a big old steak with some asparagus next to it. Fabulous. I'm thrilled.
Yeah, I'm so happy to hear you say that, Kelly, because you found something so from the outside in, so specific that works really well for you and has worked so well for so many people. But at the same time, you're able to zoom out and say, hey, random person eating standard American diet, if you just ate a little more meat at every meal and a little bit less of the other stuff, you just filled yourself up with, an extra steak. you'd be so much better off. And I'm not going to stop you from doing that or say you have to do it this way. Like, I think that's excellent. There's always going to be this like 1% of the 1% of us who follow a strict carnivore diet and can tinker with it and talk about the different nuances. But for the most people, they're not going to get there. And that doesn't mean we shouldn't share our story and share our way of eating and try to encourage people to try it. But if you have a friend or a relative and they just want to make a little bit of progress and they're ready to make small steps, you should never discourage them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And my husband, as much of a hard time as I give him, because I'm fixing poor James in so many ways, but I'll fix him a big plate of food. And if meat is the main thing on his plate, I know that he is also going to want a salad and he'll probably have a potato product. I'm not thrilled about that. But like you said, any step in the right direction, if the steak just gets a little bigger and the serving of the other stuff gets a little smaller, then yeah, I'll take it. That's right.
Awesome. Well, Kelly, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate your time and your wisdom and your generosity today. Where can people find out more about you?
Well, YouTube is where I probably put out the most content. If you go to YouTube and just search for My Zero, as in ZERO, My Zero Carb Life, you can find there's, I don't know now, maybe 35, 40 videos up. Daily, as you said on Instagram, I try every single day to either post a little chat, to share success stories. I love just showing how other people are thriving. And I answer a lot of private messages via Instagram. And that's Kelly_Hogan91. And then on Facebook, I am on Zeroing In on Health, along with Charles Washington, Cindy, BJ. There's a few of us over there that answer questions as well. I am not on that page as much these days as I am on Instagram, but especially if someone tags me there, Kelly Williams Hogan, then I pop in and try to help out when I can.
Awesome. Well, I'll certainly link to all those in the show notes and I'll be following along and encourage folks to do so. Keep up the fantastic work, Kelly. And thanks again. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Oh, thank you, Scott. You keep up the good work too. I appreciate you, man.
Thank you. If you enjoy the show, please consider supporting the Carnivore Cast on Patreon. By becoming a patron, you'll help us reach more people and continue to create content on carnivore. There are also exclusive perks available, such as private Q&As, consultations with me, and more. Become a supporter at patreon.com/carnivorecast. Check the episode description for the link. Thank you, and I'll see you there. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Carnivore Cast. If you enjoyed this episode, please review on iTunes. It really helps us out. And share it with a friend. What questions would you like answered? Or who would you like to hear from in the carnivore research community? You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Carnivore Cast or go to carnivorecast.com. You can also email me at info@carnivorecast.com. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep it carnivore.